All right, everyone. Today we are going to be focusing on Canada's economy. Now, if you remember, on Tuesday we focused on Canada's government. And if you've noticed, throughout the year, it's very important that a country has a good government and a good economic system. That is how you have freedom. If you remember from the parallel lines that we saw when we did the continuum lines, and we talked about the government continuum line and the economic continuum line, if you remember, it showed that if a country has governmental freedom, it's also going to have economic freedom normally. There may be some variation, but they're normally going to be in the same place. If a country has no government freedom, meaning no political, when I say government freedom, meaning no political freedom, when there is no governmental freedom, then there's also no economic freedom. The two work in concert together. There's no possible way you're going to have a command economy where the government owns all the businesses, but people have lots of political freedom. Doesn't work that way. So it's very important that we know not only Canada's government, which we saw on Tuesday, but also Canada's economic system and how their economy works. So let's take a look. First of all, this wonderful skyline, this is Toronto. So Toronto is the financial center of Canada. Not to mention, Toronto's also the largest city located in the province that has the largest population, the province being Ontario. So there's the CN Tower right there. But if we're going to talk about Canada's economy, you might as well start with the financial focal point of Canada. So, Toronto. Now, for Canada's economy, Canada has a market economy. Now, a lot of students, sometimes when we talk about Canada, there are some things socially where Canada has a lot less freedom. But just in terms of, can I run my business? Can I do X, Y, or Z? Canada has a market economy, so you are free. You are free to own your own business. The citizens own their own business. They make decisions on what to produce and what prices to charge. Canada's GDP is $1.9 trillion. There's a lot of money that flows into Canada. Even though Canada does not have the largest population, they are really good at what they do. They are a first world country. They are very modern. They have a lot of different resources that make them a lot of money, both in the production and the exporting of those resources. The GDP per capita, now if you remember per capita, we said per capita is a Latin term. You just have to remember per person. So the average Canadian citizen makes about $51,342 a year. So that's really good. You're a first world country if your citizens are making especially over $50,000. You don't even have to make over $50,000 a year, but if you're in that range, you're good. Now, as usual, this is going back to when we talked about Europe. When we break down the GDP, in other words, what are the sectors? What are the sectors or divisions of the economy that bring in the most money, that makes up GDP? Because remember that GDP was $1.9 trillion. Well, agriculture only brings about 1.6% for Canada's GDP. Agriculture tends to be the smallest in most modern countries. Now, that doesn't mean agriculture is not important. After all, you kind of have to eat, all right? So it's kind of important that you have agriculture, but in terms of what makes up the overall GDP, agriculture is normally at the bottom. Then you have industry. Remember we said industry, we're especially focused on manufacturing. That brings in 28.2% of the GDP for Canada. And services, things like finance, meaning banking, insurance. That's going to be 70.2% of Canada's GDP comes from the services division, or the services sector of Canada's economy. Trading. Now, when we're talking about relationship, and you'll actually see this in the next video, when it comes to Canada and trading, their biggest trading partner, the biggest relationship they have, is with the United States. Over 3/4, for those who are bad at fractions, that's 75%. So over 3/4 of Canada's exports are to the United States. So when you think about all of Canada's exports, and remember, we're talking about everything from timber and mining, potash, gemstones, to maple syrup, all right? The whole range of exports, and there's a whole lot more than that, but I'm just giving you the range. Everything from timber to mining to maple syrup. 75% of Canada's exports go to the U.S. The U.S. is by far Canada's biggest trading partner, Canada's biggest customer. The USMCA, I'm not going to go much into that because the USMCA we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail in the next video. The USMCA free trade agreement with the US and Mexico is very vital to Canada's economy. Canada's economy is really based on being able to trade on the continent of North America. So they like to have good relationships with the United States and with Mexico. Right? Facts about Canada. When we talk about, well, Canada, what do they produce? Are they really a powerful economy? Let's take a look. They're the second largest exporter of wood products. China's number 1. Canada is 2. So think about all the countries that have forests. Think about all the countries that have a lumber industry. Canada is the second largest exporter of wood products. If you remember when we did the Amazon rainforest, you remember how I talked about the fact that the Amazon rainforest could disappear tomorrow and there would be more than enough oxygen just in trees alone to oxidize the entire planet? Well, Canada, you're talking about large forests. Remember all that kind of wilderness area? Remember how everyone lives in the south? You don't have a lot of people up north? You've got a lot of pristine lands with just millions upon millions of trees. So second largest exporter of wood products. They produce 71% of the world's maple syrup. Now, you might think, well, that's not really vital to, people staying alive. No, it's not vital to staying alive, but it sure tastes good. And I love pancakes and waffles. Syrup is amazing. You people who put fruit on pancakes and waffles, what are you thinking? There's only one thing. It's butter and syrup. Now, what does that have to do with this lesson? Absolutely nothing. But I thought I would say that just because of how much I care about you. Only put butter and syrup on your waffles and pancakes. But back to this. So they produce 71% of the world's maple syrup. And think about it. What's probably the biggest customer of Canada's maple syrup? The United States. Now, by the way, we do produce our own maple syrup, but Canada, largest producer of maple syrup in the world, 71% of the world's maple syrup. They even have a maple syrup reserve. I didn't have the picture there, I thought I did. But they even have a maple syrup reserve. Just in case something happens, maybe to some trees, or they have a down year, they can still supply maple syrup. So that way, that industry doesn't go down. They're the 4th largest producer of oil. So 4th largest producer of oil, so think about it. The United States is the number 1 producer of oil. Russia is number 2. Saudi Arabia is number 3. And Canada is number 4. So 2nd largest exporter of wood products. 4th largest producer of oil. 1st in mining potash. Remember we said potash is used in fertilizer. Think about it. You need fertilizer for agriculture. 2nd in gemstone mining. So think of gemstones, rubies, sapphires, emeralds. Those gemstones, they are 2nd in that. Just with these alone, by the way, I just listed a little bit of what Canada does. You can start to see how their GDP could be $1.9 trillion when they're 1st in fertilizer, mining the minerals that are used for fertilizer. I was about to cough and stop myself in time. 2nd in gemstone mining. 4th in producing oil, 71% of the world's maple syrup. 2nd in wood products. By the way, thank you to memecenter.com for this wonderful meme that is kind of a nice little laugh / humor about Canada and their love of maple syrup. All right, the exchange rate, this is going to be the last thing for us. The exchange rate. There we go. Now I can actually talk. The exchange rate is 1 to 1.25. This is the exchange rate US dollar to Canadian dollar. So it takes $1.25 in Canadian dollars to equal $1. So the US dollar is still a little bit more valuable than the Canadian dollar, but you can see the Canadian dollar has a pretty high value if it's only 25 cents off the US dollar. And so here's a picture, This is a loonie. So by the way, this bird is called a loon. So this dollar coin is called a loonie. And then you have 5s, 10s, 50s, 100s. Those are the normal currencies. Oh, sorry, and 20s, totally forgot. 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, and 100s. Those are the normal paper bills that are printed in Canada. Now, again, this was just a short overview of Canada's economy. Now, for your assignment for this video, your assignment is pretty simple. In the description box below, I have linked a video of how maple syrup is produced in Quebec. All right, so have a little fun today. How maple syrup is produced in Quebec. This is, it's really nice, probably about 5 minutes, a little less than 5 minutes, I should say. Now, your assignment is simple. After you watch the video, I want you to come up with a plan. If you were, let's say you're the congratulations, you've been elected Prime Minister of Canada, all right? Now, obviously, your biggest customer is the United States. But let's say you're thinking, hey, you know what? We need to broaden our horizons. We're going to ship our maple syrup to another country. How would you get other countries to be interested in buying maple syrup from the maple syrup companies in Canada? What would you say? What would your argument be? Not so much argument, but what could you do to persuade other countries to take a look at the Canadian companies that sell maple syrup, right? So we know that maple syrup is shipped to the U.S. The U.S., there are people in the U.S., companies in the U.S., those are your big customers. But what could you say if you are Canada? What could you say to get other countries interested, or what kind of deal? So it could be what you say, or it could be what kind of deals could you make that would get other countries, people from other places besides the United States, interested in buying maple syrup from Canadian companies. So that is your assignment. Let me know if you have any questions, okay? By the way, it only needs to be paragraph at the most, right? So 5, 6 sentences, so it doesn't need to be much. I don't want you to write a 5-page essay, okay? So 5, 6 sentences will do. Let me know if you have any questions, okay? Take care.